Mr. Rivera of Florida.
Thank you so much, Madam Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for your distinguished service to our country. I was a few years ago, last time I saw you down at the Biltmore in Coral Gables. Hope you'll come visit us again very soon. My question regarding our government's reaction to the treatment or mistreatment of American citizens abroad, particularly the treatment of the Cuban government to American citizens. Last week marked the 15th anniversary of the Brothers to the Rescue shoot-down, in which 4 American citizens were murdered over international airspace. And I'm wondering, did the State Department or the White House issue any statement marking that day and condemning that heinous act?
I will have to check on that, Congressman. I remember it well, and your description of it is accurate. It was a terrible, terrible injustice and murder of 4 Americans who were peacefully protesting the Cuban regime.
Well, I appreciate those remarks. I also want to ask you about American citizens who could avail themselves of the Cuban Liberty and Democratic Solidarity Act, otherwise known as Helms-Burton. As you are aware, Title III of Helms-Burton allows U.S. nationals to sue foreigners for damages in U.S. courts if those foreigners traffic in property confiscated by the Castro dictatorship. Now, there's also a provision in Helms-Burton that says the President may suspend Title III for a period of not more than 6 months if the President reports in writing to the appropriate congressional committees at least 15 days before such suspension that it is necessary to the national interests of the United States and I emphasize, and will expedite a transition to democracy in Cuba. Now, Helms-Burton, that Title III of Helms-Burton has been suspended every 6 months since former President Clinton and former President Bush and now President Obama have done so. Can you tell us how such suspensions have expedited a transition to democracy in Cuba?
Well, I think, Congressman, obviously we do not have democracy and freedom in Cuba. There is no doubt about that. But we do believe that the current regime is having to face the reality of its mismanagement of its economy, of its repressive policies. We saw the release of political prisoners, some of whom were in prison the last time I testified before this committee. We still see terrible abuses like the reaction to Mr. Zapata's mother and so much else. But it has been the assessment of 3 presidents, as you rightly point out, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, that continuing to suspend Title III is in the national security interests of the United States. And it is predicated on many different factors, but the ultimate conclusion has been the same for the last, 16 years.
So can you give an example of the second part of that requirement, expediting a transition to democracy? I understand in the national interest of the United States, but it doesn't say or. It says and will expedite a transition to democracy. Is there any example of that recently?
Let me respond to you for the record because I don't want to misspeak, but I will get you additional information, Congressman.
Thank you very much. Finally, with respect to the recent lifting of sanctions on the regime, we know that in the history of the United States, we've seen some lifting of sanctions when President Carter reestablished diplomatic relations with Cuba. We saw the results, for example, the Mariel boat lift when former President Clinton established the track to people-to-people contacts. We saw the result, the 1996 shoot-down of 4 American citizens. Why would we expect a different reaction now from the Castro regime in terms of reforms, democratic reforms in reaction to our lifting of sanctions if we've never seen it before?
Well, I think, Congressman, our goal is to assist the people of Cuba themselves. We are not aiming our lifting of sanctions in any way to please the Castro regime. We are trying to help the people of Cuba, and with some of the economic changes that are going on in Cuba, the unemployment, the laying off of hundreds of thousands of workers, as you know. We think maintaining a very positive approach to the people of Cuba, letting them know that the United States government, that the American people, not just Cuban Americans, but all Americans, support their freedom, support their eventual democracy, we think is in their interest, and that's why we do it.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.